Printing press. Originally, people would use wood blocks when printing. They would carve the image they wanted into the wood. At first, printing was to make images and playing cards, but when paper became a bit easier to obtain, they took the wood block method, carved words in the wood instead of an image. The problem with wood is that it deteriorated quickly, and they wanted to produce the same exact style each time. Even if there was the slightest chip or crack, the wood would be thrown away. Since each word, phrase, or picture was on a separate block, this method of reproduction was expensive and time-consuming. They would have to buy more wood and carve the words in themselves, or pay someone else to carve the words in for them. The fact that books were becoming more popular did not help either. To fix the wood problem, Johannes Gutenberg used a metal made out of lead and tin instead of wood. The metal would retain its shape even while being pressed down in the press. With this, he was able to print books twice as fast, he didn't have to waste time replacing the wood, and allowed him to save money. For the longest time, he had tried to keep his technique a secret, but despite his best efforts, everyone discovered his secret and used it themselves. This caused book prices to drop altogether. It even allowed people to print things like travel manuals. Spain. Spanish Armada conquering the Americas. Spain was sending fleets of ships to America to establish new trade routes. They were mainly in the southern areas of the Americas, and they were constantly gaining strength in this bold new world. Spain was also having an artistic revolution. Many artists were coming from Europe that were rejected there for their art styles, as they weren't seen as European enough. They didn't have the right style of art for the area. The artists that came from Europe to Spain had a very unique style of art. They had a new free style of art that was less traditional than the artists in Europe. Galileo. Galileo is an Italian astronomer, mathematician, and physicist. He made laws for modern science, made the first telescope, and made mathematic formulas to many physical laws. But he didn't become that way overnight. He didn't even plan to be any of those things. At first, he was a University of Pisa student, where he majored in medicine. But it wasn't until later that he'd drawn to mathematics and physics. During that time, he invented a hydrostatic balance. This brought results that had many questioning what they were teaching others. Was what they knew correct or not? In 1609, after hearing reports of a simple magnifying instrument put together by a lens grinder in Holland, Galileo constructed the first known complete astronomical telescope. With this invention, Galileo discovered that the moon had an uneven mountainous surface, and that the Milky Way was made up of numerous separate stars. Although, as great as Galileo's discovery was, the court disapproved of it. They told Galileo he was not to uphold it or teach it, as they thought it was a danger to the faith. But, despite the warning, he published a book that talked about the Earth not being the center, and that it was actually the sun. After being called to Rome a year later, Galileo was told that he would live in Siena under constant surveillance from then on. But in defiance, Galileo left Siena for Arcady and continued the pursuit of scientific truth until his death. France. The ruling house of Valios became extinct when Queen Margaret died in 1615. Her ex-husband, Henry de Navarre, succeeded to the throne of France as King Henry IV in 1589 after the death of his brother-in-law Henry III. Henry IV was also founded the Bouillon dynasty after assuming the throne. Rome was on their way to conquest and conquer the known world, and France got wound up in the war. This was mainly caused by the Protestant Reformation. 30-Year War. This lasted from 1618 until 1648, when the Peace of Westphalia came about. This war claimed the lives of several thousand people. China. The Ming had been losing power since 1368 and were leading to their end. They were a large and powerful dynasty. The Ming ended with riots in the streets and angry mobs of people showing up at Capitol buildings. Qing rise to power. The Qing was gaining a ton of support from Chinese citizens over the time that they weren't in power. The Qing was what the Chinese people needed to revolutionize the way China worked. They were still working in the old ways and needed to boost productivity.